The alien queen took me for a one-night experiment. Now she's crowning me king. The galaxy had learned to fear silence. When the great empires went quiet, it meant something was changing. Borders shifted, fleets vanished, and old certainties died without warning. That was why the Galactic Council watched the Thalric's empire with careful attention. For 10,000 cycles, the Thalrics had been stable, unchanging, ruled by a single queen whose mind touched every citizen of her vast hive civilization. Then humans arrived. They were late to the stars, technologically behind, politically fragmented, and emotionally strange. They argued among themselves, laughed during serious discussions, and questioned orders instead of obeying them. Most species believed humans would fail quickly or become clients of stronger powers. The Thalric's queen did not believe in quick judgments. From her living throne, deep within a city grown rather than built, the queen studied the human reports. She saw contradictions everywhere. Humans were weak alone but dangerous together. They feared death but ran toward danger. They built weapons yet spoke endlessly about peace. Most unsettling of all, humans resisted psychic influence in ways no species ever had, not through strength but through unpredictability. Their minds bent instead of broke. Curiosity, once awakened, could not be silenced. That was why the queen ordered a private experiment. The human chosen was not a general or a politician. He was a mid-level diplomatic analyst named Elias Carter, selected precisely because he was unremarkable. He had no psychic training, no enhanced biology, and no secret authority. He represented humanity at its most ordinary. Elias was told only that the queen wished to observe a human mind without interference. He was warned that the meeting would be intense, personal, and unlike anything he had experienced. He was not ordered to attend. He volunteered. The chamber where the experiment took place was warm and alive. The walls pulsed gently, responding to the queen's thoughts. Elias stood alone, unarmed, his breathing slow but steady. When the queen revealed herself, she did not do so with intimidation. She appeared as she truly was, vast and alien, her presence filling the room not with fear but awareness. For the first time in her long existence, the queen withdrew the comforting unity of the hive. She was alone in her own mind. The experiment lasted one night. No observers were allowed. No recordings were made. What passed between the queen and the human was never described in official records. There was conversation, silence, shared memories offered and rejected, moments of confusion and moments of clarity. The queen probed gently, expecting dominance or submission. She found neither. Elias did not try to impress her. He did not beg, threaten, or worship. When overwhelmed, he admitted it. When confused, he asked questions. When offered influence, he refused it politely, explaining that trust mattered more than advantage. At one point, the queen tested him by revealing a future in which humans ruled beside the Thalrics, powerful and respected. Elias listened, then asked who would be free in that future. The question unsettled her. By the time the chamber dimmed and the experiment ended, the queen felt something she had not felt since her species first awakened intelligence: doubt. Elias was escorted away, unharmed and exhausted. He believed the experiment had failed. He prepared his report honestly, stating that the queen had learned more about humans than humans had learned about her. He did not know how right he was. Across the Thalric's empire, subtle changes began. Drones hesitated before commands. Overseers requested clarification instead of executing orders instantly. The hive did not fracture, but it slowed, as if thinking for the first time. The queen isolated herself and reviewed ancient law, long ignored. These laws spoke of transitional eras, of times when a single will could no longer guide an entire civilization. They spoke of symbolic figures, outsiders meant to introduce contradiction. The laws had never been used, until now. When the queen summoned her inner council, shock rippled through the hive. She announced that the experiment had revealed a fatal weakness in Thalric's civilization. Total unity had brought stability, but it had also ended growth. The hive could survive only by learning choice. Choice required an example. The queen declared that a new role would be created, one without command authority, one immune to hive control. A crown without chains. The council protested. They argued that no Thalrics could fill such a role. The queen agreed. She named a human. Elias Carter was taken from his quarters under heavy guard, not in chains, but surrounded by protectors. Rumors spread instantly. Other species whispered of manipulation, conquest, or secret weapons. When Elias stood again before the queen, she did something unthinkable. She bowed. She announced to the galaxy that the human experiment was not over, that the subject had passed every test not through strength but restraint, that humanity had demonstrated a form of power the hive could not produce on its own. Elias was told he would be crowned king of the Thalric's Imperium, not to rule, but to remind. As the chamber echoed with disbelief and the galaxy reeled from the announcement, Elias realized the most dangerous moment of his life had just begun. And humanity had never been more visible, a human crowned king of the Thalric's Imperium. No fleets moved, no weapons fired. Yet fear and confusion spread faster than light. Other empires believed it was a trick. Some thought humanity had found a way to control the queen. Others feared the Thalrics were preparing a silent conquest. On Earth, leaders argued through sleepless nights. They had not planned this. Elias Carter had not planned this. Humanity had wanted peaceful contact, not a crown placed on one of their own by the most powerful mind in known space. Elias himself felt small inside the vast living palace. The crown rested lightly on his head, grown from crystal and organic metal, warm but not heavy. It carried no power, no command codes, no psychic link. The queen had been clear. It was a symbol, nothing more. And yet symbols changed civilizations. The queen stood beside him before the gathered Thalric's council and transmitted her words across the empire. She spoke not as a ruler, but as a witness. She explained that for countless generations, the hive had been perfect. No conflict, no waste, no uncertainty. But perfection had frozen them. The future required disagreement, choice, and voices that could say no. Elias did not speak, he listened. That alone surprised many. The queen announced the final rule of the crown. The king could not give orders, he could only ask questions. He could not command loyalty, he could only offer perspective. Any Thalrics who chose to listen did so by free will. The council expected Elias to claim authority. He did not. When asked to address the empire, Elias spoke slowly, choosing simple words. He said he was not a ruler. He said he was afraid. He said humans did not know all the answers and never would. He said mistakes were part of being alive and choice was the price of growth. He told them that unity mattered most when it was chosen, not forced. Some Thalrics disconnected immediately. Others stayed, confused but curious. Across the empire, small changes began again. Not rebellion, not chaos. Questions. Workers asked why systems existed, not just how to maintain them. Caretakers requested permission to adjust long-fixed routines. Overseers began listening instead of correcting. The hive did not collapse, it breathed. Other species watched in disbelief. The Thalric's Imperium did not weaken, it adapted. Productivity dipped briefly, then rose in unexpected ways. Creativity appeared where none had existed before. Solutions emerged without direct command. Humanity did not celebrate. Earth's leaders released a simple statement. Elias Carter did not rule the Thalrics. He represented humanity's values, not its ambition. Humanity sought no territory, no advantage, no throne. For once, the galaxy believed them. The queen's presence grew quieter over time. She stepped back, allowing the hive to function without constant guidance. For the first time, Thalric citizens experienced silence inside their minds. Some feared it, others loved it. Elias spent his days listening. He spoke with engineers, caretakers, thinkers who had never thought of themselves as individuals before. He did not tell them what to become, he asked them what they wanted. That question changed everything. There were failures, confusion, moments when the hive nearly snapped back into rigid order. Each time, Elias refused to force stability, he trusted them to choose it. The queen observed from a distance, proud and uneasy. She understood now that her greatest act of leadership was stepping aside. Eventually, she summoned Elias one final time. She thanked him. She told him that the hive no longer needed a crown. The symbol had done its work. The Thalrics would never return to what they were, and that was not a loss. Elias removed the crown and placed it on the living floor. It dissolved quietly, returning to the palace. When Elias returned to Earth, there were no parades. He asked for none. He returned to a quiet life, carrying something no metal could represent. The galaxy remembered. Humanity was no longer seen as weak or dangerous. They were seen as something rarer, a species that refused power when offered. And that choice echoed longer than any empire ever had. Years passed, but the galaxy did not forget. What happened between the Thalrics and humanity became something scholars argued about and children learned in school. Some called it the Age of Questions. Others called it the Quiet Turning. No one agreed on a single name because the change did not arrive like fire or conquest. It arrived like a slow sunrise. Elias Carter did not become famous in the way heroes usually did. He gave no speeches, wrote no books, and avoided interviews. When asked about the crown, he always said the same thing. It was never his. It belonged to the moment. Still, his influence traveled far beyond him. The Thalric's imperium continued to change. Individual thought, once a rare and frightening thing, became accepted. Not celebrated, not demanded, but allowed. Some Thalrics chose to remain deeply connected to the hive. Others learned how to step away and return by choice. Both paths were respected. The queen remained alive but distant. She no longer ruled every moment. Instead, she observed, intervening only when the survival of the species truly required it. For the first time, her mind rested. Other empires struggled to understand what had happened. Some tried to copy it and failed. They appointed symbolic leaders without changing their systems, and nothing improved. Others attempted to control humans directly, believing the secret lay in biology or psychology. They failed as well. The truth was harder than that. Humanity's strength was not something that could be taken. It had to be chosen. Earth changed too. Contact with the Thalrics forced humans to look at themselves. Old arguments about power, control, and leadership took on new meaning. If a hive empire could step back from absolute authority, what excuse did humans have? Progress was uneven. Humans were still human. They argued, failed, and disagreed loudly. But something had shifted. The idea that strength always meant control began to weaken. Elias watched all of this from a distance. He lived near the sea now, far from government buildings and diplomatic centers. Sometimes he helped young diplomats prepare for alien cultures. He told them not to try to impress anyone. He told them to listen more than they spoke. Most important of all, he told them not to seek power. One day, a message arrived from the Thalrics. It was not from the queen, it was from a group. They called themselves the Questioners. Thalrics who had chosen partial separation from the hive to explore art, theory, and long-term planning. They asked if Elias would visit, not as a king, but as a friend. He agreed. When Elias returned to the Thalrics world, he barely recognized it. The living cities were still vast and beautiful, but there were spaces now. Open areas designed for reflection, debate, and even silence. The hive still existed, strong and united, but it no longer pressed inward at every moment. The questioners greeted him with respect, not reverence. They asked difficult things. Was humanity happier now? Did choice always lead to progress? Was unity still valuable if it could be refused? Elias answered honestly. Sometimes choice led to mistakes. Sometimes unity failed. But the ability to choose made responsibility real. Without it, success meant nothing. The Thalrics listened. They did not agree on everything, and that was the point. As Elias prepared to leave, the queen reached out one final time. Not with command, not with pressure, but with a quiet presence. She thanked him again, not for changing her empire, but for showing her what she could not become. She told him that the future no longer belonged to queens or kings. It belonged to species willing to doubt themselves. When Elias returned to Earth, the galaxy was already changing again. Smaller civilizations began asking humans for advice, not weapons. They wanted to know how to balance strength and restraint, unity and freedom. Humanity did not pretend to be perfect. They shared their failures too. That honesty earned trust no fleet ever could. Long after Elias was gone, long after the queen faded into legend, the story remained. Not as a tale of romance or domination, but as a reminder. The most powerful empire in the galaxy was not conquered. It was convinced. And the species that did it did not rule the stars. They simply refused to rule anyone at all. Change never moves in a straight line. The galaxy learned that slowly. After the Thalrics Imperium transformed, many smaller powers tried to reshape themselves overnight. Some succeeded in small ways. Others failed badly. A few collapsed under the weight of sudden freedom. Choice, humanity had learned long ago, was powerful, but it demanded patience. Humans tried to explain this, but lessons were easier to admire than to follow. Elias Carter was old now. His hair was white, his steps slower, but his mind remained clear. He watched the stars from his home by the sea, knowing he would not see many more years. He was at peace with that. Then another message came. This time it was not a request, it was a warning. A distant coalition, calling itself the Unified Axis, had begun expanding rapidly. Unlike the Thalrics of the past, the Axis believed unity meant obedience enforced by fear. They absorbed worlds quickly, not through violence alone, but through pressure, isolation, and control of information. They had studied humanity. They had studied the Thalrics, and they believed they had learned the wrong lesson. The Axis decided that humans were dangerous not because of strength, but because of influence. They feared ideas more than weapons. So they planned to remove humans quietly by cutting them off, surrounding them with controlled allies, and turning the galaxy against them. No fleets marched. No attacks came. Instead, embassies closed, trade slowed, travel permits vanished. Humanity found itself isolated not by force but by silence. Many on Earth panicked. Old voices returned, calling for displays of power, for weapons, for fear as a shield. Others argued for patience, believing the truth would reveal itself. Elias was asked for advice one last time. He listened. Then he asked a simple question. What are they afraid of? The answer was clear. They were afraid of losing control. So Elias suggested something that frightened everyone. Do nothing. Humanity did not threaten the Axis. They did not expose secrets or form counter-alliances. They opened their archives. They broadcast debates, failures, disagreements, and mistakes. They allowed the galaxy to see humanity as it truly was, confused, divided, imperfect, and still choosing cooperation. The Axis did not know how to respond. Their propaganda depended on clear enemies and simple lies. Humanity gave them neither. The more the Axis warned others about human influence, the more curious those worlds became. Some began asking questions. The Thalrics noticed first. Without fanfare, Thalrics' trade routes opened again. Thalrics thinkers shared public discussions about governance and choice. They did not oppose the Axis directly. They simply existed differently. That difference spread. Worlds within the Axis began requesting exceptions, cultural exchanges, limited autonomy. The Axis refused, tightening control. The pressure cracked from within. Elias did not live to see the end of the Axis. He passed quietly, surrounded by family and the sound of waves. There were no monuments raised in his name, no titles added to history books in bold letters, but his words remained. Years later, when the Axis finally fractured, no one pointed to a single cause. Analysts listed economics, communication failures, and leadership strain. Only historians told the deeper truth. The Axis fell because too many people asked why. Humanity remained what it had always been, not rulers, not conquerors, but a mirror the galaxy could not stop looking into. And the stars were quieter for it, not because of fear, but because for the first time, civilizations were thinking before they spoke. The galaxy was still dangerous, but it was awake.